Hi, I'm Alison Bukowski, and this is the CustomerX Files. Professionally speaking, my background is rooted in marketing, but last year I ditched the CMO career path and followed my true passion, putting the customer at the forefront of business strategy. You could say I'm all in on the overall customer experience. As I always say, we are people before we're professionals, so personally speaking, you'll often find me spending time with my teenage daughters, traveling, cooking, exploring thrift shops, or hiking on secluded trails. Tom Petty fills up much of my playlist, British programming is often on TV, and as an English major, oddly, my reading list is surprisingly short. But there's only so many hours in the day, the cats knock my book away, or the dogs are begging for me to take them for a walk. More importantly, thank you. Thank you for joining me each and every episode with my incredible guests. We're so happy to have you here and so happy to have you join the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the CustomerX Files. We had a bit of a brief hiatus at the end of 2024 because, well, life was being life. But we're back on track now, and I'm thrilled to start this year off with an incredibly important topic and even more spectacular guest, Antu Buck. Antu is an accomplished and award-winning marketing leader. She's currently serving as the Director of Customer Marketing and Community at Gigamon, but has over a decade of experience at McAfee as well. And she continues to inspire me and demonstrate success. She steers customer marketing initiatives through that really special blend of creativity and analytical expertise. So I'm super excited to dive into a conversation today. Welcome, Antu. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Allison. I think I'm beyond excited. I feel like I've made it. I'm on your podcast. This is it for me.
I wouldn't go that far, but
no. So now, joking aside, it is a true honor to be on your podcast today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you. And that's just it. This is a conversation, and it's kind of crazy to think when this launches, February will have started. And it means we have 1 month, right, under our belt. So for those of us that follow a calendar fiscal year, honestly, we're already thinking about Q2. But I think it's important today, even more so than ever, this conversation. And it's what Antu and I are calling a 30, 60, 90-day refresh. You can kind of think of it as your cleanse, if you want, for the new year, because many of us have advocacy programs, but it's time that we're setting our goals or refreshing goals. And we really are looking to discuss the refinement of activities that are associated with the program, or come up with new ways, if you have an existing program, to just breathe new life into those activities and engage your customers in new ways or unique ways. So let's go ahead and get started. And my first question, Antu, I'd love to hear from you. So do you think a 30, 60, 90 mentality can be applied to a program, even if you already have one?
That's a good question. And my answer is yes. I think having a 30, 60, 90 plan is a great, powerful tool, whether you're launching or you're refreshing. Like you said, it's the new year. We're all taking a look. Hopefully, most of us have done our AOP planning, but we're looking at how can we evolve? And the one thing I will say is, everything is always evolving, but I think customer marketing moves at a lightning speed. So I do think it's very important to actually do a refresh, be aligned with the trends and insights and your company goals. So in conclusion, I do think your first 30 days should be all about learning and setting foundations from the previous year. And in the next 60 days, you should focus on building momentum. It's a new year, and focus on implementation. And as you look for the next 90 days, you should think about what can you optimize? What lessons did we learn last year, and how do we proceed forward next year?
I love that you called out the first 30 days and looking back. So there's people that are listening today who are new to their roles, or maybe they're starting a new program. But there's also plenty of us who we've changed roles. I mean, that's exciting, right? We're seeing a lot of momentum with people stepping into new roles. And you mentioned, look at what's been done historically. And maybe, I know for me, it's important to, if you're stepping into a new role, what existed before that? What was done before that? Or even if you're in your current role, but things have changed, to look back and reflect. What are some other things, Antu, that we can look for? Like when we think about looking back and finding the things to make that first 30 days successful, like do you just have a couple of tips, that listeners should pay attention to?
Yeah, so I think if you're someone who's already been it, that one is easy. You look back and go, what worked, what didn't, what were the gaps, like what, shortcomings did you have, and you don't want to go ahead and hit that into the new year. But if it's someone who's new, it can be very overwhelming. I think you want to start with the basic, just build out your foundation, get to know people, and really go, okay, what do we have? Because you just don't want to rush into it, because if you rush into it, you'll go back and go, I missed this. So I think it's really get to know and start with the strong, like you need a good base foundation. So especially when you're starting out, and especially you don't have anything to compare with, but at least you can go and ask other, like, what do you have in place? Do we have a case study library? Did we have someone in place? Do we have any champions? Do we have any tools? So it's easy just to know what we have in place and then kind of build from, okay, this is what I'm going to implement.
Yep. I like that. And I think making that list of questions actually makes it easier. I think so many times we jump to, well, what am I going to do? And what do I need to put on my list of things to check off? What about just the curiosity piece of it? So I don't know about you, but sometimes we skip right past it because we're so concerned about showing value. But you brought up an excellent point, which is if you go too fast, you're not going to set yourself up for success, because you're either going to miss something or you'll have to go back and do rework. I think your list of questions, and I would also add it's important to ask about the data. Like what do we have, right? I know you're very analytical. Just a quick like sidebar, when we're talking about questions to ask, could you just comment on data and analytics and what are good things to ask or look for?
That is a really good offer. And I think one thing you and I can agree is most enterprises don't have good data. How many times to talk about this? It's not in Salesforce. I have spreadsheets. This is probably the most challenging part. However, I don't want to take away data is essential in having a reliable system. That's going to be your foundation for building your program. You want to get a tool in place that integrates with Salesforce, because if you're just trying to do these one-offs, you're not going to get the true holistic view of everything, and you're not going to be able to show the impact. So if you really want to show how effectively you engage with the customers who are responding, data is important, and you need tools that are all going to integrate together to be successful. And as much as we don't like to work with data because it's messy, we have to work with it. I'm a big believer coming from sales. It's all about the metrics, numbers, and it goes into marketing, because the only way we can show the value, because the one thing that I think sometimes everyone thinks customer marketing is a nice have. It's not. We're going to show how we're growing. And so we need that data to show our executives, like, this is the value we bring.
So you mentioned, and I knew this, you have a background in sales, coming coming from that world, and I know people want to hear. So, like when you made that transition from sales into this customer marketing world, kind of why did you make that transition, and what were you able to sort of take from sales and then keep it top of mind to solve for when you came into customer marketing? I know that's not 30, 60, 90 necessarily, but I know people, they're sitting out there like, come on, Allison, ask her the question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I'll be honest. I initially made the change from sales to marketing was to have more of a work-life balance. I was a new mom and I was always on the road. I worked until about I was like right before my due date, and I was on a plane. I always say that my son's a good traveler because I travel ton. We were everywhere visiting customers, and I didn't let me hold me on. But I wanted a balance, but at the same time, I love customers. I think they're the core, not just when you're in sales, but in marketing. So when initially I was like, marketing, I knew I wasn't really sold on marketing. I was like, okay, I want to do a work-life balance, but what's going to be the right transition for me? How do I keep what's core, and the most thing I enjoy is at the customers? So this opportunity just happened to be a coincidence that I was able to find. But once I was able to bring so much more value because a lot of people in marketing, they don't know the customer. Not that I'm saying that that's true, but that comes, being in a, and then being able to map your marketing programs to a sales cycle is huge. You're a lot more successful. You know when to ask. Is it at the beginning? What do you need? What do you need during the customer sale? And having that customer journey. So I was able to find that I'm really good at it because I was able to map it and knowing from a sales. And it was easy for me to work with sales because I knew not to bug them during QBRs, not end of the quarter. Timing is everything. Just in sales, timing is everything. So I think that really was like the worlds that I never thought would meet. So I think, and I'm not shy. I think that's the biggest thing. When you go into becoming building advocates, you have to be out there. You have to be bold. You have to ask the hard questions. And that comes in. I think selling a program is so much easier than selling them $1 million deal.
That that's true. And I would say that even though sales has a very difficult job, and that's why customer marketers are so eager to help support that. And I'm curious because we were talking about questions, right? And questions that you can ask yourself when you're in your first 30 days and you're setting things up. I'll deviate for just a second, but keep it on that topic of questions. With sales, you mentioned when not to bother them, which is incredibly insightful. What questions should you ask? They're your number one stakeholder most of the time. What should you ask them so that you can plan, like, and be successful?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think first of all, building that relationship. I don't know if we're gonna get to it. Like I think we had talked about a question, who are your biggest internal stakeholders? And it is sales. And I think you want to make sure you show them the value. Why should they work with you? What's in it for them? What's in it for their customer? Because at the end of the day, that's what's gonna drive them to work with you. And the other part, as much as I don't think I was that driven. Sales is driven by money. I think they want to know how can they make extra money too. So some of the stuff you ask, you have to ask, like, is a spiff going to get you to nominate your customers, or is it you have great relationships and you know that my program is going to give you that value and grow your relationships? Because the one thing that I think a lot of the times sales push backs when they don't have the customer relationship. That's one thing I've learned at this company, my current role is you get pushed back when they don't have the relationships. But I do think that when sales have those relationships, they know they're going to benefit from working with you because you're going to give their customers recognition and rewards. You're also going to put them in touch with your executive team and also give them network opportunities. But I think just going there and just telling them, hey, this is what my program offers and building that, relationship will actually it's going to help you. It's because if you think about it, it's a win-win for both of us. You're making their customer feel like you're giving them that white glove service saying, hey, my company is here. It's not just me, but we have an entire team that's going to support you.
Yeah.
Hopefully I answered your question. I think I went up a little bit.
No, it's good. You added the additional context, and I just want to call out a couple of things that you said that I think are incredibly insightful. Is asking the question of sales up front, and that's what will it take for you to engage with this program? What will it take for us to be successful together? What will it take for you to nominate a customer as an advocate? And I don't think we do that. And even myself, I don't think we do that enough to just be very blunt. And, sales is usually, let's be honest, working with sales, they like that. Cut to the chase. Let's get to the bottom line. Just tell me, what is it going to take to be successful? And I've asked those questions of you can do it with other stakeholders too, right? You're going to get wildly different answers from say CS or sales or even your marketing counterparts. But when we're talking about those questions, and you're right, we had kind of talked about like who's the most important, stakeholder, and there's certain others. Who else would you add to the list that you think in your first that 30-60 that you need to make sure that they are on board?
So I think you touched up on one of them already, customer success managers. Let's be honest, they are the closest and they're going to help you identify who the advocates are because they're going to know who had a good experience with the deployment and who didn't. So they're going to help you shortlist the people that you want to target for the program. And of course, sales team, they know the customer pain points. They know the customers. At the end of the day, they're the ones who really own the relationship. So you need sales on your team. And, you want to build that trust and alignment at the beginning. So as much as you can communicate, I'm a big believer, like, when they win a deal, just send them a message, like just start building that rapport because sales is going to be the key to your success. But you also need to work with a product team because they know the product usages, they know the features, like especially when you want to create assets and the storytelling, the PM's really going to help you drive messages, not just from, what we're trying to do as a company, but what is the business value of having this solution? And it can really help you tailor good, strong stories. Because, we can obviously, you have AI tools that can just split out any story, but we want those strong, customized stories. And then the last one is hard, but it's the executives. You need the executives' buy-in. You have to be aligned to their business goals. And if you think about it, your CEO's number one priority is the customers. It's all about the business that we bring in. And in order for your program to be successful, it has to come from top down. So, and I think even for, like I was saying, and when we were kind of starting it, I've seen such a huge shift in my company. I mean, the executives are more and more bought in from three, even when I first joined to now, it's all about customers, customers, and that building that loyalty and retention.
And what caused that shift, do you think?
Because I think if you think, I mean, if you look at it, or from what I see is, I think customer retention is huge. It's great to go out for net new logos, but the customers that we get, we have to make sure we retain them and have that renewal business grow. But the other big shift we've seen is the customers that are part of all of our customer marketing programs. And I shouldn't say it out loud, they tend to spend the most. They're the ones who come to us. They're the most engaged. And we've just seen the engagement and the deal size grow so much more. Those are like kind of like our gold star customers
Yeah.
are the ones that are part of the program, and they want to replicate this. And we've been able to build some new features based on the customers trusting us, saying, hey, I love you do this, but I also want this. Can you work with us? And the fact that I've been able to create my team opportunities for them to engage with executives. It's been a true partnership, and we're just seeing so much more has together versus the customers that are not engaged. We're not seeing that growth that we should be seeing.
And so that goes back to a couple of things we were talking about, the right questions to ask. We were just talking about that. We touched on the data, and you mentioned that there a little bit, but I want to tie it to kind of long-term strategy. Even though we're talking right now about the 30, 60, 90 getting started, I think an important part of 30, 60, 90 is what are you going to measure,
Yeah.
right? And which metrics matter. And do you have any that you would recommend? Like these are absolutely, you want to have these, even though it might take a little time to be able to show the impact, like
Yeah.
the forethought.
No, this is a good question. I mean, definitely. I think anytime we all present to executives, you can't just be like, "Oh, this is all we had this event. It was great." They want to know the metrics. They want to know what the. So, I mean, I think the simple ones when you're early starting, just to do the quick wins, it could be, promoting. Like we got this new asset, or we got this new champion to show, and we got them featured in a press release. Those are like the quick wins. But at the end of the day, I think it's all about closing business. So you want us to be able to track what was the influence pipeline, how much did you help reduce the sales cycle for this deal because they were involved with you, or like what was some of the retention, how much did they grow by, as well as there's I mean all of these are more sales driven, but I know that that's what the executives care about.
Well, yes, because it all ties to revenue, and I think that that's where you have to start, and that's why I wanted to call it out because kind of like you don't want to go backwards, right? That's why the 30, 60, 90 is so important. Even if you have a program that's 10 years old, I don't care. You go back and you look at it and say, okay, well, what do I need to make sure that I'm measuring this year? Who do I need to be engaging with? What questions do I have to make sure that I'm asking? This is all really important. Do you have any, like, let's stay on data for just a second. And let's talk about data quality. How we touched on it. It's always like, is it really that good? I feel the larger the organization, the more shaky that foundation of data is. But how do you, sitting in a customer marketing role, make sure that the data is reliable so that these metrics you're reporting on are accurate and then actually valuable?
No, that is, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a struggle. I mean, I'm gonna put that out there. I don't want everyone to listen to it because, especially, you're right. The larger the company is, the more data resources you have, the more tools you have. I think that one thing that really helps is having that one source of truth. And not that I'm trying to do a plug for point of reference. I think having one tool as your source of truth does really help, and having it be from your Salesforce, because sometimes I've even noticed when the data our Salesforce, and like we'll get a notification saying, oh, this account doesn't have a champion anymore. It goes back to sales to kind of update the data. So I do think having a tool really does help with the quality. You do need to scrub it. I do have to spend time with sales saying, go in there and nominate. It's a simple button, so you do need, in order for the data to be correct, you do have to get sales to help you, but make it easy, over communicate saying, hey, if you get it, like I do some of the like fun things where just for recognition, we'll highlight like our top quarterly nominations or top who win in the system. Just make it easy for them and also give them recognition. That's really going to help, because unless sales doesn't put the data in, you're not going to be able to track it. And at the opportunity, the more you tie it to it. So we tie everything, like all of our reference activities, our case studies, at that opportunity level. And that's how we get that dashboard saying, this is closed won, this is your pipeline. And so it's really like, operations obviously is good. You want to be best friends with sales ops because they're going to help you, because as much as we get technical, there's a lot of moving parts to it. But I think just making it easy for your sales and your stakeholders does help you get high quality data and campaigns, I guess. There's so many moving parts to it. I'm making it more high level, you know.
No, well, yeah, but you're right because you can get into the weeds so quickly with data. And I think that data quality also, I've been really excited to see organizations that are actually making a commitment to data quality improvement projects. I saw a lot of that last year, and I've heard about more of it happening this year because it's like, thank you. The message is finally getting out that everything, hinges on that data. And regardless of which team it feeds into. So that's good. And I love the tips about getting, your stakeholders who are responsible really for the data. How can you get them engaged, actually inputting information? Because sales is usually like, they're on to the next opportunity. And so that actually kind of flows right into something else that I wanted to talk about, such as data management, getting your stakeholders to respond to requests, getting them to put data in. That all kind of becomes a big part of change management, right? And again, 30, 60, 90, doesn't matter where you're at in that journey. One, why is change management so critical, especially for our world? Let's start there.
Yeah, when I think about it, and I think I go back to us as humans, change management is difficult. Like, I think by default, we don't like change. It's very hard, like, to drive changes. It makes us feel uncomfortable. And, you hear like motivating things saying, when you're uncomfortable, that's when you grow. But when we first are, given something that is change, it's not the norm, we all struggle with that. But what makes us do that change is it's kind of showing and making it easy. We're like, okay, and showing them the value. I think that's what kind of drives us. When I'm given the change, I was like, okay, why do I want to change this? What value I'm going to get? So it's the same thing with us. It's showing that value and recognizing that, what, this is the rewards we're going to get with. And I think the other thing is change kind of makes us feel uneasy. I'm kind of correlating it to as humans and as the program managers. But one thing, the more we hear, the more you communicate and the more you build trust. The more we hear about something, we get more comfortable. And it's the same thing with our stakeholders. The more they hear from you, the more they're aligned with you and the build the trust. So honestly, I do think change manage is important. It is challenging. But the more you communicate, the more you align, and the more you build trust, and just take it as how we take as humans. It's applying the same methods. So how we get comfortable with something, you want to do that in your programs.
I love that you called out trust as, the foundation. I think a lot of times, and you've been doing customer marketing, just like I have before it really had a name of customer marketing. And it was all about, I don't know, I used to hear things from colleagues like, oh, well, how nice for you to have the fun job that basically you get to just hang out with, customers and stuff like that. And the happy customers. That was always the thing that I would hear. And it it's true. And it used to be kind of like, oh, it's the big like build a relationship and then you're successful. And then we had that huge shift of measure, 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 measure. But we can't throw away the cornerstone of what made us so good at what we were doing in the beginning, and that was building trusting relationships and having that trust. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And you're right. The more somebody sees something and the more comfortable they can get with it, the better off you'll be. So you might feel like it's overkill, but it's all part of the change management process. What Speaking of that, what have you done or where have you had success, right, to be successful with this, with change management, especially in those first 90 days, like just a couple of highlights that set you up for success?
There's a few. I think building trust and over communication. Like you want to be the person everybody knows at the company. And we're a joke because everyone teases me. They're like, "Oh, you're a celebrity," but I have taken so much effort to be in front of everyone to go ahead and build those relationships. Because I think in the first, um, you know, 30 days, one of the biggest thing I say is get to know everyone and make sure they know you more than anyone. Because the thing is, you want to show up in a room when you're not there. Like if they're talking to a happy customer, you want them to be like, oh, you know what? I need to send this to Antu. This is what we can offer. So I do think that that's huge is because, we're a lot of the time your team of one. You need everyone to be advocating and building your champions. And that's huge in the first 30 days is you're there and you got to build your community of advocates that are going to go and advocate for your program when you're not there. So honestly, like, it's kind of funny that you said everyone thinks it's like this fun job that we have. We get to hang out with the happy because, but there's so much foundation work that we do internally before even we get to that happy customer. A lot of people don't realize how much work, the bigger the company is, the more people. There's so many meetings we do on a daily basis. I mean, let's be honest, and a lot of them are just meet and greet. You know, just educating, and you're like, you've been here for 3 years, everybody knows. And no, it's on a regular basis. And I can't emphasize, doing the work is one, but if you're not going out there and telling everyone, it doesn't matter what you're doing because no one's talking about the program. Then it's just you talking about the program by yourself with your corporate marketing team. So that's a huge part of the first 30 days.
Oh, there's so much goodness there. And we share the same philosophy. Used to have a mentor who would say, like integrity, that's what people say about you when you're not in the room, and it's the same kind of thing, that value that you bring. And and unfortunately, and I'll say it, I don't think there are enough CMA professionals out there that get to that place where their programs infiltrate the DNA of an organization and they are talked about. So you do, it's not a job for the faint of heart. If you aren't ready to be a gentle bulldozer and just make your way through and get people to talk about you, it's very difficult to be successful. So I'm glad that you reiterated that. I have a couple more questions, but okay, let's go. Let's talk about goals. So we talked about in the first 30 days the importance of looking at the data, asking the right questions. I think then moving into that 60-day kind of period, you talked about then you're really doing that change management. You're knocking on doors, you're shaking hands, you're kissing babies, you're making sure that everybody knows what's going on with the program. Now, as we move and round out that first 90 days of your cleanse or your refresh or whatever you want to call it, what do we look at for goals and how do you set up goals based on the 60 days prior to that?
No, and that's a good question. And I'm going to break it down, which you'll notice I do this with all the way I answered. What are the steps for yourself and the program? So let's focus on what you should do as far as your first 90 days. I think at this point you should know who your customer base is. You should be able to know what customer personas we're going after, who are the top tiers, who are your advocates, and who are your detractors. You should have a small pool of that. And I think this one is, I hit it so much, but building relationship at, in the first day, you should be able to have some strong connections at this point with your internal stakeholders that are going to take this program to go to market internally for you. We talked about operational knowledge. We have to know what the tools, what the processes are, what the data sources are. You got to make sure that how can you know what the customer insights and engagements are. That's a huge part of really showing the value. And then, and I'm big on celebrating everything. I think having quick wins. It's so daunting because we think about on a year, this is what I want to do. But in this space, that's very hard. So you got to keep the momentum going. So I think being able to identify opportunities for quick wins and build momentum and share them across, like whether if it's just something small, like you refreshed a testimonial and you got this new feature included in it, and it's like a new thing that we just want. But I think it's important because that's how you get everyone excited, because you can't wait a year to talk about wins. Then no one really cares. They're like, oh, she's been here a year, what does she do? But it's important to get that adoption, to have that quick wins. And then now we'll shift gears to on the program. I think audit and assess. That goes for new programs or old programs. You should have been at this point, you should have been able to do a quick, review what you have, review your inventory, review your comms, and be able to analyze the past program's performance and kind of understand a little bit, I'm not saying fully, what worked and where the improvement is needed. And then, of course, metrics for success, KPIs, that's huge. I think this should go across not just for your goals for 90 days, it should be for 6 months, 12 months. That's just an ongoing thing. And I kind of like to have like a roadmap. Like, what are we going to do the first 90? We already did first 30, 60, 90, but it doesn't stop that. It goes to 6 months, 12 months, 2 years plan. You always want to be looking ahead on what do you want to do. It shouldn't be an afterthought, because I think you should have a holistic approach to what you're trying to get to and include milestones. It's important to have milestones, because not only because it makes you feel good, but you can actually share them out with not just your internal stakeholders, but with customers. I do this with all my champions because a lot of them are trying to get promoted and they're looking to see how, what are their big milestones. So whether we get them in a webinar or we got them published here, that's part of sharing that milestone, as far as the program and the value you're giving them. And of course, engaging customers. The more you engage with them, the more comfortable they are with you, the more they trust you. So I think that's huge. And again, this is kind of like doing a win, but showing the early impact. If there are certain, metrics you can get back to your executive team saying, this is what we've been able to see in the 90 days. I think that's huge to show. You should have some sort of impact metrics for the first 90 days.
I agree. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm picturing people listening and frantically kind of scribbling down notes. Because you're like me, we get excited when we're talking about this stuff because it is exciting.
Yeah.
Milestones. I love that. You use the term milestones, you use the term quick wins, and then also longevity. And there's no reason you can't do all of those things, but it does take a little bit of effort and a little bit of planning. But the quick wins are so important because, to your point, you can't wait a year to say, oh, now look at what I did. One, that's just too long, and you're not going to get the buy-in and that visibility that you need. So, and keep things realistic. You mentioned earlier, maybe from a data perspective, some of the first things that you're doing is a PR plug and a customer has a quote or something like that. That's a win. I mean, it's not saying I've brought $5 million into the pipe, but start somewhere and set that up. And the one other thing, and I'd love you to comment on this, because we talk a lot about the customer journey, but you were mentioning sort of your journey, the advocacy journey. Do you like, how do you keep track of that? Do you actually map it out? Does it live in your head? What do you do, Antu?
That's it. Part of it probably lives in my head. I mean, I think, and I do try to communicate. I just think that it's just hard because I mean, you and I are very alike. We get so passionate. I'm always like, what's the value? So suddenly I do have I'll share with my team, because one of the things that we ask when we meet someone is, is there something that you're trying to achieve besides, great, you're a champion, but is there something compelling that's driving you to join our program? What are you looking? Is there a career growth path? And I think when someone says it, that's when we kind of do like an advocacy journey for the customer. And some will be like, no, I'm just excited and everything. But you'll be surprised at how open and how excited customers get when you just ask that question. And I think that's when it starts. And does everybody take on this offer? No. I mean, I think there's a handful of advocates that I work with that have an advocacy journey. They're looking for certain opportunities, and we try to map it to them. And it's something that I don't think you do for all of your customer pool, but it's for a subset of it. And it kind of varies because I really ask them what they want to do, and it just happens that the PR team's working on this, and I'm like, wait, I have someone who wants to get featured here. They're perfect. Let's pitch it in. I mean, some of it does come being on the spot. Like there's a lot of stuff that, comes with me just being, sitting with a PR person or the AR and finding these opportunities. So can I just like say, oh, these are the best practice? No, a lot of it happens as it happens. If that
Yes.
makes sense.
No, it does. And ask the question. Back to as we're wrapping up, I'll bring it back to the very beginning of the call, which is asking questions of your stakeholders. What will it take to get you to engage here? What will it take for us to be successful? And I think it's important to call out shared success, right? We both want to be successful. You can do the same thing with your customers. I've done it, and it's just smart. Don't
Yeah.
try to guess. You have somebody right in front of you. Say, why do you want to be in this program? What is interesting to you about this? What are your goals? And how I can help you achieve it. And to your point, that's not everyone. It's not, you're not going to detail that out for everyone. But I mean, does it ever hurt to ask? I guess is kind of my question. What do you lose by asking? And then what do you gain?
Yeah, I mean, if someone just be like, nothing, I mean, it's okay. At least
Yeah.
you did your part, your check. And you'll be surprised. I think we're so afraid to ask, but that's the one thing that I think even I've had that a lot of people say that I have a lot of grit at this company because they're like, you just go there and ask. You are just, but I think we need that in our role because this is how we're gonna, like, how am I gonna know what you want to do? And it's part of, I think it's a great, trait to have because this is how you win because it's such a big overall and there's so many moving parts to this role. And I think asking the questions and knowing where everyone stands and what they want to do really helps to be successful.
I agree. It brings a lot of clarity. And I think, speaking of clarity, I think this conversation has brought a lot of clarity to what it looks like to start either fresh, or for those of us who have been doing it for a while, maybe we need a refresh. It's sometimes good to do that, to just take two steps back. And you've provided so many pearls of wisdom on how we can do that and what it looks like. I appreciate you so much. I mean, as a friend, but also in the community and what you offer. So thank you very, very much for joining today.
Thank you. No, this was so much fun. I'm glad I was able, even if I helped someone, one person, I'm happy. And the only thing I'll say in like kind of closing, I think having a structure approach really helps for long-term success, and I just wanna emphasize that. And I think, for anyone who's starting out or someone who is just, starting the new year saying, "What am I gonna do?" But I think it's just huge. Structured approach is huge for your success in this world, in this chaos world, I should say.
Yes, it is a little bit chaotic, and anytime we can add a little bit of structure to it, and I find that if you're structured, it's easier to get other people on board with helping, start with that foundation and that structure. That's great advice. And hopefully it's okay if people are listening and they want to connect with you. I assume that LinkedIn is an easy way to do so. Yes?
Yes, I'm always happy to connect. You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, pop in. It's a small community and I love meeting everyone. And yeah, so definitely send me a note and I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Antu. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We are back on track for 2025. So you will start to see more and more episodes with all of your favorite folks in the customer marketing and advocacy community. And until next time, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to bookmark it wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow me, Alison Bukowski, on LinkedIn. And a special thank you to Point of Reference for supporting this podcast. For over 20 years, Point of Reference has been the Salesforce native solution to solve a myriad of customer advocacy and reference management challenges. It's our goal to elevate the professionals within this space to achieve business goals and drive their programs forward as vital to business success. Contact me to learn more.